cannot compare your life to a highlight reel. If you're somebody who's like, yes, Lord, like I just can't wait till I get my new luxury 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. Okay. Is your current room clean? You have everything you need because you have Jesus. Hey guys, it's Editor Jada. Don't be alarmed. Don't act like that. I know my hair looks crazy. I look kind of crazy right now. You're all up in my business at this angle. But, and I'm sorry, the AC's in the back. But let's address the elephant in the room. The audio for this video is so bad. I'm so sorry. I did not use my microphone. That's just that. And it's just terrible. It has so much reverb. It has so much echo. It's really hard to focus sometimes on what I'm saying because sometimes I raise my voice and I'm clapping and I'm doing all this foolishness. And I was like, oh, I'll just throw it away and start fresh. But as I was about to just discard it to start fresh, I really felt like I should still release the episode because I feel like even if it's just for me, it's something, I feel like I said some things that I needed to hear, and also feel like I said some things that might be relatable to at least, I don't know, to some people. So this is just the editor's plea. Like, if you could bear it, please still stick out for this episode. I'll never do this to you guys again. And I'm working on more stuff for you guys. And love you guys. God loves you so much more. And back to the episode. Boop. How are you guys doing? How are you feeling? It's been a while. It's been 2 months. Girl, I was checking on my YouTube channel the other day. That thing said 2 months ago. I said, yikes. But we're back and we're better than ever, and I hope that you guys have been well. The positioning of the mic, the positioning of the camera is also weird because I kind of wish you guys were right here, but you guys are right here. And so I guess forgive me if I'm like looking all over the place or not always looking at you guys because it's more natural to look here. But I just felt like for lighting purposes and like scenery purposes, it was better to position the camera here. So let's jump in. So today I kind of want us to talk about comparison, stewardship, and contentment because I really feel like in this season of my life, I feel like God has been teaching me how to be content and how important that is in my walk. And I think the goal here today is to kind of like walk you guys through what I've been learning, and hopefully it could be helpful to you because I feel like in this day and age, there's a lot of just like hustle and bustle culture. There's a lot of like looking left and looking right because of our constant exposure to social media. And I feel like sometimes we get so caught up in, I want more, I want this, I want that. How can I be more like this? How can I be more like that? So much so to the point where we forget to just have gratitude for what we already do have. And sometimes we can even forget that we have to be very watchful of how we're stewarding the little that we do have before we're asking for more, because God looks at how we take care of what we do have presently. And I really feel like that's what's been driving home for me in terms of learning to be a good steward with like my time and with my resources and all of that good stuff. So let's jump right in. It is exceedingly abundantly above all things. Hey. You guys know that song? It just lives rent free. And that's Bible too. That's Ephesians 3 verse 20. Yup. I love that song. Anyways. I want us to check out Matthew 25 verse 13 to 30. And I'm kind of honestly trying to see if we should read the whole thing verse by verse or if I should just give you guys a summary because it is long. Like, I was trying to read it last night, and I don't know. Should we read it together? I don't know. Let me see. Let's just read it. All right. So everybody lock in. Open up your Bibles. I changed my mind. We're going to read it just straight up because I'm trying to, like, summarize it, and it just was not giving. It was not making sense. So let's just read it straight, and then we can talk about it. All right. So we're here, and we're in the book of Matthew. And here Jesus is giving us a lot of parables to tell us like what the kingdom of heaven is like. So kind of like throughout this section you see a lot of different stories where he's like, the kingdom of heaven is like this, the kingdom of heaven is like that. And for this one in particular, it's called the parable of the three servants. So we're going to start from verse 14, and I'm actually going to read all the way until 30. So, all right. And I'm reading from the NLT version. So again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. Then he left on his trip. The servant who received the 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earned 5 more. The servant with 2 bags of silver went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received the 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. After a long time, their master returned from his trip and called them to give an account of how they had used his money. The servant to whom he had entrusted 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, "Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest and I earned 5 more." The master was full of praise. "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." The master who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, "Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest and I earned 2 more." The master said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." Then the servant with the 1 bag of silver came and said, "Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here's your money back." But the master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it." Then he ordered, "Take the money from this servant and give it to the one with the 10 bags of silver. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now throw this useless servant into outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Ooh, girl. You know what's so funny is I think that even though maybe not that many people have actually read I don't know. I just think it's interesting how I heard like some pieces of the story before I ever read the story, and the part that I always heard in particular was that, you know, I would hear people say like, "Oh yeah, I'm just trying to hear, 'Well done, my good and faithful servant.'" And amen to that. But I think the thing that we don't talk as much about is the context that it was placed in. The hearing of "Well done, my good and faithful servant" was received after the master came back and saw good stewardship. Good stewardship is what produces "Well done, my good and faithful servant." And now to just draw that to the present, I especially love verse 29, where Jesus says, "To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away." Stewardship involves like everything. I don't know if in this story in particular, it is talking about money, which stewardship of money is incredibly important. But I think for myself, I've been thinking even about like how I've been stewarding my time. Like at the end of our life, when we have to sit before Jesus and give an account of the way that we lived our life and the things that we did, I think that's also like what it comes down to when it comes to hearing like the "Well done, my good and faithful servant." How did you steward your time here? So I've just been really thinking deeply about how it is I could be intentional and be a good steward of my time. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I don't always use my time very well. Like, especially when it comes to just wasting time on social media and scrolling. And it's funny because that's also where I feel like the comparison seeps in, and social media just has this way of like sucking you in. And I don't think social media is bad by any means. I think it's a beautiful neutral resource. I guess I can only speak for myself. I guess it's like how I use social media. And it's like I never necessarily use it with the purpose of comparing myself, but I guess it's just that, like, as I'm scrolling, I feel like I'm constantly exposing myself to like people's highlight reels, and everybody's life from the perspective of social media looks really, really great and really, really polished and really, really fine and dandy all the time. When truthfully, like, that's not necessarily the case. That doesn't mean, that their life is bad or anything. But I think when we're comparing our real life to the best parts of people's lives, it can very easily feel like you're not doing enough, or your life is mundane and insignificant and boring. But it's like, you cannot compare your life to a highlight reel. You can't compare the entirety of your life as a real person with, every time you scroll on somebody's social media, it's like, boom, just got engaged, just got a new car, just got married, back to back to back. And it's like, it looks like it's back to back to back, but you don't know. You know what I mean? And I think that when we're looking left, looking right, it could get to the point that we're not even focused on what God has already blessed us with. Before we move on, I just wanted to say a couple things that I think is interesting about this story. Like, one, I feel like the fact that Jesus even made this a parable goes to demonstrate that stewardship is important to him, and watching the way in which we steward the things that we already have is important to him. Because, like, again, going back to 29, to those who use well what they are given, even more will be given and they will have an abundance. I guess with how hustle, like I was kind of saying, like with how hustle culture is glamorized, and with how I feel like, I don't know, in today's day and age, I feel like we are really living in just such a time of overindulgence. Like, we have so much at our fingertips all the time. Like, with the internet, with what we're exposed to, like, you can have access to, it's like, I don't know, it just feels like, especially like with this coming generation, with like technology development and all those things, it's always like more. How can I have more? And I feel like, on one end, it's beautiful that the world has developed to such a place where I think we have an abundance of more resources and different opportunities for how we could make our life more luxurious and convenient. But I think between that and then our constant exposures to social media, it almost like can produce like a gluttonous appetite in our lives. Or maybe I can only speak for myself, to where it's like we're just constantly seeking for more. How could I make more money? How could I get more of this? How could I da-da-da? And I don't think it's necessarily wrong to desire more, but I think it could become dangerous when we're so fixed on attaining the more that we're not focused on what we have. You know what I mean? And on stewarding well what we have, because even from this story, we could really see where it is important for us to, and it's important to God, for us to take good care of what we have. And in today's day and age, sometimes it's like, I think of like the phrase where it's like, oh, the grass is greener on the other side. Sometimes it's like we could be looking so much at other people's grass and how green it looks, right? How green, because we're going to talk about that, because not everything is always as it looks. But sometimes I feel like we could be so fixed on like the way the grass looks on the over on the other side, that our own grass is like wilting away. But it's not because it's not good grass, it's because we're not taking care of it. Like, it's like we're looking at other people's plate and we're like, oh my gosh, like, look at what they got going on. They just got this opportunity. They just got blessed with that thing. They just got like, what's like, oh my gosh, like, they have such an awesome life. Whole time, our food is on our plate, but it's rotting away because we're not taking care of it. Does that make sense? Like, it's like, I kind of feel like sometimes we could get so fixed on like all of the luxury that the world has to offer and how we can attain it and how we could get to the place that we think we want to get to, so much so that we don't take time to be mindful and be present and be grateful for the things that we already have. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, and I think it's just so much layers to it, truthfully, guys, because that's also where comparison comes in, right? And kind of with what I was saying about like not everything is always as it looks, like it's just, I don't know, it's just such a slippery slope. And I think that with the level of social media that we get exposed to, depending on how much we decide to take in, we could really start to covet other people's things or be jealous or be bitter and not feel grateful for the things that we already have and not feel like God is doing enough for us right now, when the truth is just that we're not taking the time to be grateful for what he's given us with. And if we're not showing him that we have the ability to steward well the $500 that's in our bank account, or steward well the small circle of friends that we have now, or steward well the small following that we have now, how would he even know that we're in a position to be able to accept the responsibility of becoming a millionaire, or to be able to, you know, embrace the responsibility of becoming a full-time influencer with a large following? If we can't even steward and take good care of what we have now, like, how do we expect him to bless us with more? How will he know? You know, and I think I wanted to jump into another scripture that I was looking at that I feel like demonstrates that point pretty well. I wanted us to look at, actually, you know, yeah, let's go to Luke 16, and then, actually, let me see. I'm going to go to Luke 16 right now. Let me see. Okay, yeah, okay, so this, I'm at Luke 16, I'm still in the NLT, and this is another parable. So Luke is a book of the gospel, and it's like telling Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Yeah, so you have the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and they all tell the story of Jesus' life and his ministry, but from different perspectives. And so we're seeing here that this is still a place where Jesus is talking, and he's giving parables of what the kingdom of heaven is like, but it's from a slightly different perspective because it's written by Luke. So this parable now that we're seeing is called the parable of the shrewd manager. And I don't know, I don't think I'm going to read this one fully, but I definitely recommend you guys to read it in its entirety. It's Luke 16, and it goes from verse 1 all the way down to verse 12. I just really want to focus on verse 10 to 12. All right, so I'm just going to read it. It says, starting in verse 10, if you are faithful in little things, you will be faithful in large ones. But if you are dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. If you are untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with the true riches of heaven? And if you are not faithful with other people's things, why should you be trusted with things of your own? Yeah, I just wanted to like say that because that was another thing that I had been reading that really, you know, kind of cemented this idea that, wow, like the Lord really looks at how it is that we're, you know, stewarding the little things and taking how it is that we're taking time to be grateful in our lives. And I don't know if I'm like sounding like a record because I don't know which parts I'm gonna cut and which parts I'm gonna keep, but I feel like for myself, my relationship with social media has been a very not healthy one. And like I had said before, I'm not sure if I actually did, but social media is neutral. I 1000% think social media is neutral. I think that it is a beautiful tool that we could use to learn more about one another and stay connected. I also think that it's an incredible opportunity for like business. And honestly, like, for example, Instagram and TikTok, I feel like it's like, I think somebody was saying this as well, but I feel like it's really modern day business cards. Like, and it's true because nowadays, even like when I'm getting my nails done, when I'm getting my hair done, when I'm getting my lashes done, if somebody tells me like, yo, like I have a small business, I'm like, my first thought is really like, okay, like, can I see your Instagram? Like, can I see like your work, like what it looks like? And quite truthfully, if they don't, I feel like I'd be a little less likely to, you know, trust their services, just because I feel like it's easier to kind of take a look at what they were doing. So I think social media has such incredible benefits, but I do think, kind of going back to what I had said about like the way that I feel like the world is right now in terms of like just this overindulgence. I feel like with everything, we really have to be mindful of how much it is that we're consuming and what is the purpose for us going on social media. So like I said, I feel like it could be used for very great things, but then I also kind of like have been sitting and asking myself like how have I been using it, because I think for a long time I just kind of had made up my mind that like social media was the enemy, and like I just can't be on social media. But then it would be like phases of me just like being very fixed on the fact that like like I have to stay away from social media, I can't be on there, like it's just too much, like I just feel like I'm preparing myself. And then I'm like, oh, but no, like I really want to catch up with my friends and I want to see what they're up to, so then I go on it, and then I stay too long on it because I get sucked into like doom scrolling and short form media, and it's so easy to just like laugh, scroll, laugh, scroll, laugh, scroll. And then I'd be like, come to my senses after like a long period of time and be like, whoa, like again, going back to the phase of like social media, like I'm just wasting my time, da-da. And I really have come to the place where I'm realizing that I'm the problem in the sense of how I'm using it. And so I guess the place that I'm at now is like, social media is fine. Social media is cool. I love social media, but with boundaries. I think that there has to be parameters placed on it. And I really have to be mindful again of like stewardship and really reminding myself that, reminding myself of what it is. Social media is like a highlight reel. So I think now I'm really trying to be cognizant of that. Like when I'm scrolling at somebody's page, remembering that like they're sharing their best moments, and those moments are beautiful and those moments are lovely to share, but that does not mean that that is their entire life. And furthermore, I think what I've been learning is that I feel like comparison is very dangerous, because it's also like, I don't know, I just feel like there's no need. I feel like, especially as Christians, like we understand how individual our walk is. There's no need. And I think comparison is actually very harmful for us as Christians, because like I said, that's what can kind of knock us off of our game in, keeping forward and growing closer with the Lord and tapping into our blessings and walking in alignment with who God has called us to be. I feel like it's very difficult for us to do that if our eyes are not fixed on what we have, but is fixed on what they have. You know what I mean? And I don't even think it's bad to like scroll occasionally just to stay connected and all those things. I think that's fine, but I think we have to be careful and watch our heart and make sure we're not watching from a place of like jealousy or bitterness or envy. Because here's the thing also that the Lord has really been teaching me is like, it's so important not to compare yourself to other people, because you have no idea, like you just don't know, like everything is so much more than it seems. You don't know what somebody has had to work through to get what they have today. You know what I'm saying? Like you could see somebody and, for example, you see them in like a relationship or something like that, and you're like, oh my gosh, like they just look like relationship goals, like I wish I had that, I feel so lonely, da da da. But it's like, that's really not a great way to look at it, because you have no idea, for that couple, you have no idea what it is that they've had to work through in order to have a successful relationship. You don't know, like let's talk about the girls, like you don't know what that girl has been through. You don't know how much heartbreaks she's had to go through in order to have that successful relationship. You don't know like how much she's had to be in her prayer closet behind the scenes praying for that godly relationship. You don't know the work that the Lord has had to do in her and in her heart, in her season of singleness, for her to finally be able to obtain and be at that place where she could successfully steward that. You know what I mean? Like there's just so much different variables, and it's just like, we cannot afford to get thrown off our game by comparing ourselves to other people. You can look at them and acknowledge them and be happy for them, genuinely happy for them, because again, you don't know what they had to go through for that. Like you know, I think if we can't just always take things by face value, because that's never the case. It's never just face value. Everything has a story, everything has depth, everything has context. And I'm not saying that to say necessarily that anything, that the context might be good or bad, because it could be either. But what I'm just saying is that it's always deeper than what it seems. And I think sometimes we could get into a habit of like just taking things at face value, the way that we see things on social media, but there's always more going down behind the scenes. And I think also, like, when I was on TikTok the other day, and I saw, it was so interesting that I seen something about comparison, because I was like, oh, I'm thinking of doing a video on that. But it pretty much said, let me see if I remember. They pretty much was like, oh, comparison is dangerous because you could compare where God has you to where the devil has them. And I almost threw my phone, you guys. Oh my gosh. Because I've been thinking about that. Because that's like the flip side, right? Is that, one, you don't know like what they've had to work through. But then two, you also don't know if they're like going through their own wrestle of disobedience. Again, like what you see, there's always so much more. You have no idea if what they're doing is them making a step of obedience after going through whatever they did in that season, or you don't know if what they're doing is them making a step of disobedience. And whatever that is, that's really up to them to work that out with them and God, because they have their free will and they're working their own thing out, and they're doing, and things will work out for them in due time, however that works. But it just goes back to why you cannot compare. Nothing is as it seems. Not like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you never know. Like, you see people making accomplishments, you never know like how much sleepless nights was behind those accomplishments, or you know how much failures they had before. Like, even with successful business, you have no idea. You know, sometimes you're on social media and you're seeing, oh my goodness, they just sold out their whole new thing, they just got a new warehouse. And you know, if you're not careful, you start to envy them, because you might be like, oh, well, I have my business and I feel like, you know, I'm not giving that level of support, or I'm not getting that level of success. You don't know. Sometimes nowadays, I feel like we're now getting to that place on social media where a little bit more people are appreciating authenticity on social media. Like, I think, you know, people have especially been talking about that more with TikTok, where they're like, oh, like, how are normal people blowing up in 2025, and like this is what has been shifting. And a part of the thing was kind of like, they were saying, oh, people like appreciate seeing the real side, though, because even then you don't even know if it's like the real side, but people appreciate seeing like more behind the scenes content now. People, you know, they're kind of getting tired of like the glow, the glamorous. They want like the tea, they want how did that breakup go, you know, they want how did you overcome it, they want like all of the, you know what I mean, all the context. And so, wait, what was I saying? Yeah, so even like with the business thing, it's like before, at least before, when you would see different posts of like, oh my gosh, guys, now we're at 1 million followers, we just, you know, just got sold out and all those things. Somebody might be looking at that and be like, yo, like, how is it that you're so successful? It seems like it's an overnight thing. But what that business owner isn't showing you is like how they literally went through bankruptcy, how they got, you know, how they wasted so much money in startups, how much people did not believe in them, how much times they had to have sleepless nights, how much times they cried, maybe they faced homelessness at one point. You don't see that. You don't see the behind the scenes. And I think that's really what God has been showing me. Is like, Jay, like, it's so much more than it seems, right? So, you know, being a good steward of what you have is so important, and avoiding comparison is so important, because it's like everything, I don't know if I'm making sense, you guys. It's just like, there's just so much more to everything. And I feel like it's such a tactic of the enemy to try and have us so fixed on other people's lives that we're not able to have gratitude and be content and appreciate our own. So I feel like that's really where I've been growing in my walk, and kind of just like what I wanted to share with you guys. And yeah, I'm trying to see if there's anything else. I think now I want to talk a little bit about like contentment, and how I feel like that's kind of like the antidote for comparison, unhealthy comparison. But actually, you know what? I had some more Bible verses, so I wanted us to go through that too, because we got to get that Bible. because my opinion is one thing, but we gotta circle back to the word every time. Every time. Put me on that mic. That note was kind of good. Don't lie. Don't lie. All right, sorry. Oh, this is really good. Okay, I wanted us to also check out. Galatians 6. I love Galatians. Galatians 6, verse 4. This is good. And I'm reading from the NLT, and I feel like it really just complements what we've been talking about. Starting in verse 4, actually, I'll do 5 as well. So it says, starting in verse 4, pay careful attention to your own work, for then you will get the satisfaction of a job well done, and you won't need to compare yourself to anyone else, for we are each responsible for our own conduct. Yes, look, that Bible verse goes so good with what we were saying. Pay careful attention to your own work, your own thing, your own business, your own startup, your own group of friends, your own family. For then you'll get the satisfaction. You'll be content of a job well done. And you will not need to compare yourself to anyone else. Why? Verse 5. For we are each responsible for our own conduct. Let's circle back to that first story that we talked about with the parable of the 3 servants. Everybody, at the end of the trip, when the master circled back, each person was responsible for their own conduct. The master approached each of them individually. Let me go back to that right now so I can reference you guys. When the master came back, he went to each of them one-on-one, and he said, what have you done with what I've given you? And you notice one thing too is that, like, regardless of whether or not the person had 2 bags of silver or they had 5 bags of silver, the message of their good stewardship was the same. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You know what I mean? Don't miss this, whether or not they had 2 or 5, those are different amounts. But in the beginning of the story, they talked about how they had been blessed proportionate to their abilities. It is all individual. You cannot look at somebody else having more and be jealous of that, because they just might be in a different place than you, and that is okay. Because I don't know, like, social media, like hustle culture, it has really imprinted us to where we think that, like, I don't know, to where we just think that more is always the answer, and everybody should just be like a millionaire overnight and have success overnight, when that's really not the case. How are you stewarding what you have? You see that? What they say, each person will be responsible for their own conduct. You're so worried about them other people. How are you stewarding what you have right now? How are you stewarding what you have right now? Oh man, God is really good. Like, that's so crazy to me too, because I think we should truthfully, like, examine our lives and examine the things that we're asking for, and let's ask and be honest with ourselves about if we've been a good steward of what we currently have. You know, I'm not saying don't pray for more, but while you're praying for more, really also pray and ask God to expose your heart to see if you've been a good steward of what you currently have. Like, for example, you might be somebody who's like, where's my husband? You know, where's my person? Where's my boyfriend? Where's my whoever? I want somebody to love. And I think you should truthfully ask yourself, all right, well, are you even in a place to steward that? How did you steward your last relationship? How did that go? Were you protecting their purity? Were you focused on your relationship with God? Or was it that as soon as you got a boyfriend, as soon as you got a girlfriend, now you can't pull up to Bible study, now you can't pull up to church, now nobody has heard from you? You know what I'm saying? Like, really sit down and evaluate. Like, If you're somebody who's like, yes, Lord, like I just can't wait till I get my new luxury 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. Okay. Is your current room clean? How are you stewarding that? How's that going for you? How are you doing with what you're currently blessed with? You know what I'm saying? Like before, like if you're like, oh yes, Lord, like I just can't wait for financial freedom. I just can't wait to build generational wealth. How are you stewarding that $500 in your bank account? Like, how's that going? How's that going? How are you investing and saving what you currently have? Truthfully, are you in a place to where if God blessed you with a larger sum of money, would you and your heart be in a position to steward that well and to take on that level of responsibility? You want to invest in this, you want to have this, you want to do this, you want to do that. Okay. But how do you invest and how do you steward what you already have? You see what I'm saying here? Like, does that make sense? Yeah, so I really feel like that's what the Lord has been working on me with, is just focus on what you have, steward what you have, and do it well. And do it gladly and be content. Let's look at some verses that talk about being content. I think contentment is just so powerful, truthfully. So I want us to look at 1 Timothy 6, verse 6. All right, so we're at 1 Timothy 6, verse 6. And just for a bit of context, this is where the Apostle Paul is writing to Timothy and warning him about like the dangers of false teaching and greed and all of that stuff. So we're gonna focus here. And I'm actually gonna read 6, 7, and 8 because I think it's really good. And again, I'm in the NLT version. So here Paul says, yet true godliness with contentment is itself great wealth. After all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. So if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content. Contentment is so important, you guys. Let's look at like the definition of contentment. I just love to break everything down, so I just want to like, what is the definition of contentment? Okay, so pretty much contentment is a state of happiness and satisfaction. Yeah. I think that's what God desires for us, is to be able to master the art of contentment in every stage of our lives. Because then we're in a place of satisfaction and we move throughout life knowing that no matter what stage we have, no matter what stage we're at, and no matter what we have at that stage, I feel like contentment helps us to be sure that we're exercising gratitude in that season. And we're not operating from a place of like, I just can't wait till the next stage, because also like with the whole idea of waiting, we're always going to be waiting for something. Like, I don't know. I'm just thinking of like the more common things. So like, for example, if you're waiting on a relationship, like first and foremost, it's important to like steward your singleness. But let's say like you're in your opinion, you're stewarding your singleness really, really well, but your heart is just in a place of like, I just can't wait till I find the one for me. I just can't wait till I find my person. Boom, you find your person. Oh, I just can't wait to get married. Oh my gosh, like I just can't wait till he proposes. Can't wait for the wedding. Can't wait, get the wedding. Oh, I can't wait till we have kids. There's always going to be something to wait for. And I think that's beautiful. And it's great to have things to look forward to, but it's like while you're in that time and that space of looking forward to that thing, I think it's important for us to also balance being grateful for the present. And going back to social media again, I feel like sometimes when we're so fixed on looking at other people's highlight reels, depending on how often, how much time you spend consuming social media and consuming the highlight reels, it could be very difficult for us to be rooted in the present and to be grateful for things going on in our lives in the present if our eyes are so fixed on like other people's things. And I feel like that's just a distraction tactic that the enemy could really use, to where we're not pushing forward, and or even like it could make us feel like even though we are pushing forward and doing our best, it makes us feel like our best is not good enough because our best doesn't look like their best. But I think something that's important for us to understand is that difference is not deficit. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could have something look completely different from somebody else, and that's just that. Like, that doesn't mean that your thing is less than their thing. Your thing is your thing, their thing is their thing. And that's just the way it is, you know? But I feel like we have somehow developed like these preconceived like notions or prototypes of what success looks like in life. You know, we've labeled certain figures in like what it means to be successful financially. We labeled certain like features with what it means to be attractive physically. And it's very harmful, because then if that one thing is the standard and you deviate from that, you start to feel like you're less than. And I just really don't feel like it was ever God's intention for us to be so closely fixated on other people's lives and their things to where we feel like what we have isn't enough because we're able to see what they have and what God is doing for them. What God is doing for them, again, it also just goes back to like, you just don't know. You don't know. One, you don't even know if what they're doing or where they're at is from them operating out of obedience. That is between them and God. Secondly, if it is from them operating out of obedience, you just don't even know how much they've had to like work or pray, or like what they've had to do or what they've had to go through in order to be able to reap the benefits of where God has them at in their lives. So I think with that being said, I just think it's so truly important from the heart posture, from the heart, to be able to look at other people, and it's okay to see that they're in a different place, even if they're the same age as you. And it's important to have a clear heart and be able to look at other people's successes and their victories and to genuinely congratulate them and to genuinely be happy for them, because you have no idea how hard they prayed for it, how much, you know, things they had to sacrifice for that thing. And yeah, I just feel like that's so important. And I actually also want us to look at a Bible verse that really looks at the heart and really looks at how dangerous it is for us to foster like jealousy and comparison and envy and all those things. So let's turn our Bibles to okay, I have one more verse about contentment, and then one more about prayer, and then, but I do want to go to the verse that I said I was going to go to. Sorry. Let's turn to, okay, so I'm at James 3, and I want to read verse 13 to 16, and for a bit of context, this is from James, and it seems like he is addressing just the church in the general sense. I don't think there's any specific area. I could be wrong, though. Please correct me if I am. And he's contrasting here true godly wisdom with false worldly wisdom. And so, yeah, the subtitle, NLT again, true wisdom comes from God. So I'm going to start in verse 13. I've been talking a lot. It's okay. I don't need water. Okay, it says, if you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you are bitterly jealous and there is selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying. For jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. And then 17 and 18 talks about like the wisdom, godly wisdom, and how it's like pure, peace, loving, gentle, and full of good fruit, good deeds, all that stuff. So I just wanted to bring this verse up because I want us to be very sober-minded and aware of just how dangerous it could be for us to scroll on social media and openly just like develop jealousy and bitterness and envy in our hearts. Like I've been saying this whole episode, you guys, you're seeing things on social media and you're seeing people's lives in highlight reels and you're seeing the best parts, and you really just never know what's going on behind the surface. And regardless of what is going on behind the surface, you should be very mindful that when you're scrolling, you're not doing so from a place of like seeking validation or from a place of like lack, because you already have everything that you need through Christ. No matter what you have personally going on in your life, no matter what stage you're at, no matter what God has blessed you with, that is enough for where you're at in this season of your life right now. And, you know, while you're in the process of praying to move forward and to get more and to be blessed with more, it's very important that you're also walking with gratitude and that you're having a pure heart and that you're not looking at your brothers and sisters and being jealous of what they have. So that really clocked me, because I think that my unhealthy relationship with social media, I feel like a lot of times, interestingly though, like I feel like in the past, a lot of times, like my scrolling would start off very from like pure admiration, but it would not take long before like I would like allow like different like voices in my head to be like, oh, look at where they're at. They're 25, they have their own apartment, they're married, and look at where you're at, you know. And that's where, if I'm not careful and if I don't like cast those thoughts down, and if I don't remind myself that I already have enough and I'm already complete in Christ and like I'm good where I'm at, if I'm not careful, I could very much like get down on myself and I start to feel less than. And it's like that, it just goes back to like stewardship and contentment for real, because it's like you really, with your eyes fixed on them, like you really forget what you do have. And so yeah, it's just important to not like get yourself to that place and to really focus on like doing well with what you do have. And I'm almost done, you guys, but I do have like a couple more Bible verses and I want us to go through everything. So next we're gonna go to Philippians. I'm gonna go to Philippians. We're gonna read. Imagine. I'm so scared that I'm recording from the back camera, you guys. I'm not even gonna say the thought that I think, but that was a liar. All right, let's do Philippians 4, verse 11 to 13. And I'm actually gonna focus on verse 12 to 13. And you know this one. You've seen this in somebody's bio. You've seen it around somebody's neck before. 1000%. One of the most popular verses in the Bible. It's Paul, and he's talking about how he's learned to be content through Christ. So I'm going to do 12 and 13, NLT again. And it says, I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or with little, for I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. Amen. And I think I just had this on the list of scriptures that I wanted to talk about, because like, look at how Paul demonstrates how he learned to be content. That's just so cool. Like, he's learned to be content whether he has everything or whether he has nothing, because he knows that Christ provides everything that he needs, no matter what the season is. And I just want you guys to also remember this truth, that you're not looking to the left, you're not looking to the right, and you're certainly not supposed to have your life laid out and then analyze somebody else's life and like, you know, go off like a checklist or compare and be like, well, I'm not where I'm supposed to be because I'm not where they're at. You have everything you need because you have Jesus. Like, just that alone, you're well equipped. You're more than well equipped, actually, because he's able to do exceedingly and abundantly over more than we could ever think, ask, or imagine. And that's on that verse. So, yeah, you guys, I just wanted to close off. This was such a good episode, and a bit vulnerable as well, because truthfully, like, God has really been working on me in this area. And I have one more Bible verse. I don't know if I want to go through it. Please. I don't know if I have enough stories. I'm so oh my goodness. I just want to run to get up and check, but I'm not gonna do it. Not gonna do it. The devil is a liar. Yeah. Okay, so the last one I wanted to check out was Matthew 6 verse 6. It says, but when you pray, NLT, when you pray, go away by yourself, shut the door behind you, and pray to your Father in private. Then your Father who sees everything will reward you. And I just wanted to like bring up that verse because kind of like how, as I've been mentioning, sometimes what you're seeing in the public eye when you're like, oh my gosh, that person is so blessed. Oh my gosh, that person got this, that person got that. Like, how did that? Sometimes it's truthfully just prayer and hard work. Again, like going to how you don't see behind the scenes, a lot of times it's like you're getting to see the fruit of somebody's prayer and fasting, like, or just something that they've really been working on with the Lord, and what you're getting to see is the fruit of the blessing. What would you maybe didn't get to see is how hard that person had to work and wrestle with God and, you know, develop obedience to receive that thing. So again, just going to show like there's just so much, guys. There's just always just so much more behind the scenes, whether that's good or bad. So I think it was really important for me to bring this up in a day and age where I feel like, you know, it's a microwave generation. We're focused on overindulgence. Everything is just about like, gimme, more, you know. And I feel like we are definitely in a time where there's like an increased exposure to social media. There's also like, I feel like, you know, social media is kind of like getting a rebrand in a sense, to where I feel like people are finally understanding that they don't have to have a certain type of house or look a certain type of way or have a certain type of camera quality to be able to produce content. So we're seeing a lot more different content of like a lot more different types of people, and it's just like more in our face now. And if we're not careful, we could really over consume it and start to compare and then start to think that we're less than. And I just really don't want you guys to think that. So sorry if I'm sounding like a broken record saying it over and over again, but this is gonna wrap up our episode. I love you guys so much. I think the last two things that I just wanted to say about the podcast was that, one, this podcast is not intended to be a one-stop shop. I'm not trying to replace church fellowship. I'm not trying to replace Wednesday night Bible studies. I'm not trying to be a know-it-all either by any means. So I just wanted to say that really my heart behind this is just like wanting to share. I just want to be like a big sister in Christ type vibe. I want us to sit. I want us to be comfortable. I want us to yap. And I want us to talk about just like the ways that God has been pruning us. And yeah, just being locked in that way. So even with like the Bible verses that I share or my perspectives, I'm also like, I don't think that I know everything. Far from, actually. I do think that in being a Christian, I'm learning that the more I know is the less I know, and I'll always be learning. So I'm always open to like correction or different things like that. I just ask that, one, it be done in love and respectfully, however you decide to approach me, and also that you bring Bible. One, so that I know that you know what you're talking about, but also that it could be something that I will be able to use as reference and have like in my belt for that correction, if that makes sense. But I love you guys. Thank you for sitting to yap with me, and I hope you got something from this podcast. That's it.